Greetings, BlazeLeeDragon here, and once again, since I can't make a lot of videos lately, I guess I will do them while I'm doing other stuff, such as driving to work, so I won't be looking at the camera that much. I recently saw a post on one of the videos that actually the last video that I put up, I believe it was yesterday that I had put it up, and it was talking about, it was a response to ARLBM, and it had to do with my thoughts on fortune-telling, reading, tarot, and, talking to spirits. And I had made a comment in that video that you should always use protection when you're communicating with, spirits from other realms, or if you're doing a Ouija board, or, psychic circle, or anything like that. Anytime you're communicating with beings from another world. And with that, I had a comment to that video, and I don't remember who made it, and since this person didn't ask for a response, I'm not going to mention their name either. But they said, well, why would you need protection for doing a reading? And I did comment back to them and let them know that my analogy was, it's kind of like if you're having a party, and you're basically opening your front door, and you're announcing that your party's at your house, and anyone can come. It doesn't matter who they are. You don't know them. So you're having complete strangers come into your home, and dropping my camera since it's driving, kind of bounces it around. But it's, you're letting complete strangers into your home, essentially is what you're doing. And when you're doing a reading, you're asking complete strangers off of the astral, spiritual, otherworld streets to come into your area. And I think this right here, at this moment in this video, is why I can mostly understand why a lot of individuals do not do videos on magic, do not tell others about magic, do not encourage others about magic. And this is also why a lot of Christians and monotheists and just people in general tend to think that magic is evil, and they tend to think that, magic is the devil's work, or whatever being that they have made up. Made up, I guess, not the best word. I don't believe in the devil or Satan. A lot of people will argue that point, which is fine. I'm not telling you that you shouldn't. I'm just saying that I don't. And a lot of these different faiths will consider magic, mysticism, etc. to be evil. Which, this is probably why. And that's just for the simple fact that when you were practicing magic and ritual, well, that's the first thing I want to say. You should never be practicing, because it's something that you live. It's a way of life. And if you're practicing, that means you're doing it half-heartedly, part of the time, and that's no good. And I will strongly discourage anyone from simply practicing or dabbling. That is very, very, very bad. And this is a very beautiful sunset, so I'm going to pause it for one of the beauties of nature. That just looks really pretty. I'm sorry, I have to share that really quick. With the clouds and the horizon and stuff like that. That's just... Sadly, that's pollution, from what I understand. The color is made by shining through pollution, but it still looks pretty. And I guess that's another thing. Things can look pretty and still be dangerous and poisonous, such as the horizon. So, when we're talking about doing a reading, or a ritual, or a spell, or magic, you always want to be careful, cautious, and protective. So specifically, first of all, to that individual's comment of why do you want a protection during reading, is because you're trusting a complete strange entity and spirit. So you want to make sure that it cannot get too close to you, inside of you, in your home, stay around you, follow you, etc. You want to make sure that by bringing it to you for knowledge or guidance or wisdom even, which there are good entities and spirits, even among the monotheistic Christian faiths, such as what they call angels, that you can get guidance from these beings. And sometimes it can be very sound advice, but at the same time, just like asking random people on the street, the average person might be pretty decent. Actually, I think most people by nature are decent, which is why the word humane starts with human. A lot of people get scarred and abused and just get a nasty taste towards civilization and society and thus become assholes. So with that, you can't trust everyone, and I really don't think that you should trust just anyone. However, since you're going to take that step and ask, which is essentially what all of these mediumship, necromancy, and divinations that involve other worlds consist of, then you're running the risk of running into one of those assholes. You also gotta, remember, well, which one of these spirits are actually going to take the time to speak to you? Why are they speaking to you? And when you practice the arts, you tend to be more noticeable, kind of like a light in the dark for entities of other worlds. So with that, if you're not being protective, cautious, and knowing what you're doing, then you really shouldn't be messing around with it at all, which is why you'll see in my videos, I never tell you how to do magic, really. I mean, I tell you some of the fundamentals of the idea behind it and the theory behind it and how it works, and that's all you're going to get from me. Because I don't think just anyone should be practicing. If you don't know what you're doing, I don't think you should be meddling with it. This is not a smorgasbord of enjoyment where you just do what you want because it feels good, because it feels powerful, gives you a great image, etc., things like that. You need to be responsible and respectful when you are trying to mess with the natural order of the world, which is why in one of the videos you'll hear me and my wife say that we have not done spells beyond basic prayer, and prayer is a spell, for years. And there was actually someone who made a comment to my wife about, well, if you're not using your gift, then obviously you don't appreciate it or don't think you really have it. And we had a big discussion about that, about how personally I feel like that's fucking bullshit. Because when it comes to a gift, that doesn't mean you have to use and abuse it. And the older you get, when you have an ability, I guess it's kind of like having a sword or a firearm. And I say that because the results of using either can be extremely extreme. And they can also easily be overlooked. Let me give you an example. If I shoot my firearm at a target and destroy and obliterate that target, that's actually causing a lot of damage to that target. Now, if I use it safely, sure, I'm not going to be harming another human, another individual, a living creature, unless, I'm hunting or something. But still using and utilizing that firearm, I'm causing damage and harm. Same thing with, a weapon such as a sword or axe, whatever you want to be using. If I use it in practice and stuff, now if I'm just going through forms, I'm just waving it around, not a huge deal necessarily. And in situations like that, to me would be similar to internal cultivation with magic and mysticism, or internal healing and health, which I don't think that's a problem to practice on a regular basis or utilize regularly. But then there is also, once again, there's also theories and discussions there. I can go into deeper, but I will later video, not this one. But when you're using a sword and you're cutting something up, same situation. You're destroying, you're causing destruction, you're tearing things up. Same thing happens with magic. The natural world, nature itself, is, in a sense, perfect. And the reason I say that is it's perfect in the sense of it's how it's supposed to be. It will react. If you get poked, you'll bleed. It'll, cauterize, or not cauterize. it'll scab up and close the wound. Your body reacts to it. You also flinch away not to have more harm. Nature and the earth is very similar. It will react and it will find its equilibrium and balance. So there is no reason to be fucking with that natural order of things. Let me give you an example. Well, I don't want to train today because I'm going to be outside, so I'm going to cast a spell to make it stop raining. Sounds fine and dandy, right? Not really. You're messing with the natural order of things, causing their equilibrium to not come back into balance as quickly, kind of like bleeding you out longer instead of allowing your wound to heal. It's not good to just mess with things on a whim. Sure, could there be situations where it might be mandatory or necessary? Okay, potentially. And is one individual messing with the weather on one day going to throw the world into disarray and destroy it? Not necessarily. At the same time, not just one person. If you have multiple people, hundreds, thousands, millions all around the world who practice in secret, you'd be surprised how many people actually practice, have tried to practice, attempt to practice, or do practice. And if you have all these people messing with it and pushing around, you're causing chaos and disorder in the natural world. And that's a big no-no in my opinion. So whenever you are doing any form of magic or mysticism, once again, this is going back to the learn from someone, don't just read a book. Can you discover it on your own? Absolutely. Can you develop abilities on your own? Sure can. Just like, you can learn how to play a game by watching it or mimicking it, or you can, just get up, start swinging a stick around and have something similar to the way people swing a bat for baseball. You can mimic and do things similar through play acting and mimicry and, reading and trying to enact what you're reading and learning. And in time, you'll come close to something. It'll be very crude to a degree. Some individuals have more success than others. I believe some have natural talents and abilities. But once again, without that strong foundation of a leadership and being taught in a group, you really are kind of shooting in the dark, and you are playing with forces that perhaps you shouldn't be playing with. So I can see why a lot of people here on YouTube or in the world in general don't talk about magic or mysticism, don't talk about anything. And I guess that's another thing too. I've never really talked too much about what I do personally. I just tell you what I've researched. As far as any of you are concerned and should be concerned, I'm just a scholar. I've been accused here on YouTube of being a witch or a Wiccan, which I am not either. I have been accused of being a pagan, which I am not. I've been, a couple things that have been thrown at me or against me or requested of me or assumed of me. Not always necessarily in a negative light. Maybe accused is not necessarily the best word. But I'm not any of those things. I'm me, and that's why I've repeatedly said that. I am a scholar of the different faiths, religions, and practices, and what I choose to incorporate and choose not to incorporate is, personal, as it should be. I just want you to be aware and to keep in mind that since there's such popularity into certain paths, traditions, and especially magic, people wanting to do it, that you should be aware of what you're trying to do, wanting to do, and why you're doing it. And most of them that practice it don't use it on a regular basis. I keep using examples such as martial arts just because obviously that's a very big passion of mine. And I keep trying to give physical real world equivalents or examples or metaphors for the simple fact that the average individual does not practice magic, so I'm trying to give you something to relate back to that you may have seen or have done. And martial arts, once again, I'm going to lean back on that to give it as a metaphor. If you learn martial arts, that doesn't mean you're going to run around beating the crap out of everyone. That doesn't mean if somebody looks at you cross-eyed, you're instantly going to get no fighting stance and throw a punch or, just be aggressive. And that's not the purpose behind martial arts. And the reason I'm saying this is a lot of people out there might be, saying, well, what's the point of learning magic if I'm not going to use it? Same purpose of behind learning to use a firearm, learning training through the Army or military, Army and military might use it a little. There's more intention of using that than you learning martial arts and using martial arts. Same thing with martial arts, like I was just saying there. Why learn martial arts if you're not going to use it? The idea behind learning magic and mysticism is to open your mind, which once you become aware of the other world, there's usually no going back. Once you're aware of it, you're aware of it. You start to see it. I'm sure in time you could probably block yourself from being more aware of the wide open world. But learning magic and mysticism is being more aware of your surroundings and your world and being responsible for you. There's not crying and sniveling about the life that you have and the trials you go through. You're starting to see the reason behind them, accept and embrace them, and seeing, if you're not feeling well, if you're going through a rough time, how to be more proactive in changing it and not putting it in the hands of others, not placing blames on others, but taking responsibility for yourself. And of course, each tradition that you follow will have different theories on that. Once again, I'm sort of unofficial scholar and researcher of different paths and practices. And when you're looking at all of these different traditions and practices, you're going to find that ultimately, I was actually talking to my father recently, and I had a really cool conversation with him, and he said something which, I've said something similar in my other videos before, but essentially he said that he's found through his research that, each one of us are basically just trying to connect with God. And of course, now I would say we're all trying to connect with the divine. Once again, that's preference on how you want to word it and say it. But essentially it's the same thing. What many individuals view as God, I view as the divine, or gods and goddesses, whatever the case may be. So the idea is to connect with this divine source. Now, we might all take different paths and roads to get there. I made an analogy once of a mountain, and if the divine is at the top of that mountain, we can all take different paths to get to the top of it. Someone could fly a helicopter up, someone could hike up, someone could, ride a vehicle up, someone could rock climb a straight surface, other people might have a little bit of a hill, or an increase. Some people might get there faster, some people might get there slower, some people might chop down weeds, some people might push through them. There's different ways of getting there, and each of the paths are going to look different, but essentially you're still climbing the mountain to get to the top. And then once you get to the top of that mountain, and you look out over the world and the paths and the journeys that you traveled, not only do you see that everything looks very similar, but you also realize that by getting to the top of the mountain has not gotten you to the divine. It has given you a clearer view of the divine, which is all around you and part of you, but it has not necessarily made you reach the divine. And that's the understanding that I've come to. Like with practicing or whatever the case may be, walking that path, walking that journey, you didn't have to tear it up. And every little bit of tearing up you did is not necessarily changing the entirety of the world, but it's not your place to necessarily mess with or screw with the natural order of things, which is why a lot of polytheists are all, tree huggers or hippies type of things like that, is because they're aware of their world. They don't want to destroy it. And even modern living has a tendency to destroy things. Now, my father made an interesting analogy, and he was talking about paths as like a highway, and everyone's driving, down the highway. And you should evaluate, how fast are you driving, how slow are you driving. Just because you're not in the same car doesn't mean you're not still driving to the same destination, which I thought was a really good analogy too. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there as far as why protection, why people might to a degree think a lot of this stuff is evil, and perhaps to a degree they're right in some ways. It depends on what your definition of evil is. Once again, I think everything is based upon perception, and you'll hear me say that a lot. It's how you perceive your world. What's evil, what's good, it's perception. And of course, you will, at a certain point, get to preference. You'll start mixing things that you think are evil with things you don't like, perhaps such as magic or spirituality. But I guess it was kind of a little bit of a wake-up call when I got that message. Why do you need protection? It's a good point. Why do you need protection? It's anything that you're going to practice or do, why do you need to include things or forces that you don't understand? if you're going to go to something, using a crossbow, you got to be cautious and protective. If you're shooting at the range, you want to wear glasses and ear protection. You want to protect yourself, or if you're driving in a car wearing a seatbelt, holding the wheel, paying attention in front of you, not looking at the camera. Probably not a great idea to record either while driving, but I am anyway. If you're not cautious when you're dangerous, in dangerous situations, you are going to end up getting hurt. And it's possible to drive without a seatbelt. It is possible to not look at the road while you're driving. It is very possible to shoot at a shooting range without eye protection or ear protection. It's also very possible for those individuals who do that to get hurt seriously. And it's not going to happen every time. You're not going to get hurt every single time, but you don't want to risk it. And if you know enough to have an entity or spirit come to your call, you need to also know how to send such entities back. You don't just leave it open in the world. You don't just invite it in a smorgasbord. When you're doing protection, individuals who will bring other creatures into this world, in a sense, just to give you a very weird analogy, it'd be like, fishing into the ocean and pulling out a fish and throwing it into a little fishbowl. That fishbowl is your protection. That's the bubble that keeps it from getting around and out, and then you're plopping it back in the ocean when you're done. Like I said, that's kind of a weird analogy because not all things about a fish or a creature in the ocean is going to fit. So, just to give you an idea or something to think about, just be aware. And I'm dragging on, and it's 22 minutes, and I'm about at work now. I think I've reached the end of my point. I want to make sure that there's nothing else I can think of or say. As always, feel free to make comments, make requests. If you don't have to agree with everything I say. I don't have all the answers. I never have. I have some answers for me, which work for me as of today, which are not necessarily accurate. I am seeking truth. I am. But what is truth? I think truth is a concept and a goal that we reach for and strive for that we may never attain. But the suit and the quest and, being sought after, basically, even if I'm not using the word correctly, is something that we have to do or we don't do. Either you look for truth or you don't look for truth, but muddling it down with lies and misconceptions or other people's word for it is not necessarily going to get you any closer. Then you're no longer living in truth or reality. You're just playing at answers, and that's not going to do anyone any good, including yourself. So, anywho, I'm here now, so I'm going to go ahead and put that down here. I guess I could have done that the whole time. And back up. So, at that, comments, responses, opinions, share them. We all like to hear them. Just be polite and respectful. Don't be rude. I'll just delete your comments. We all live in a world where we're individuals, and it's good to accept others for being themselves. There's really no point in being a jerk to anyone. So, just keep that in mind and do what you can. Wow, people driving the wrong way. Nice. So, BlazeLeeDragon, out. And hopefully I can do more videos soon.